Chapter 511, 293. The battle is on the brink of breaking out. A fight to the death with Vice-Governor Ye Yongsheng, _2. The scene was extremely gruesome. The self-destruction of a legendary level creature was too powerful, almost erasing the entire battlefield from the map, turning it into a void wasteland. Lin Ziyi, what just happened? Shen Qinghan peered out from Lin Zikan's embrace, looking at the unbearable scene around them, filled with unease. Lin Zikan didn't rush to answer, instead, he looked up at Ye Yongsheng in the sky. Seeing that the treacherous vice-governor was only bleeding from the corner of his mouth, having sustained minor, insignificant injuries, Lin Zikan's expression immediately became grave. The self-destruction of a legendary level creature at such a close distance had only inflicted such minor damage to Ye Yongsheng. Ye Yongsheng's strength was far greater than imagined. With this thought, Lin Zikan involuntarily furrowed his brow, feeling somewhat uncertain. Before this, he had always believed that as long as he too evolved to the legendary level, he would have a chance to join forces with the city's leaders to take down Ye Yongsheng. Now, it seemed he had been too optimistic. To take down Ye Yongsheng, he needed to continue absorbing and evolving further. With this thought, Lin Zikan let go of Shen Qinghan in his arms and dashed toward other areas of the city in a flash. The old man with white hair had just self-destructed, killing many creatures within the city. An indiscriminate attack. Whether from the same race or alien races, any with a lower biological level and too close in proximity were mostly killed on the spot. Killing 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of your own. The worst part was, the enemy you wanted to kill wasn't taken out. Those killed were insignificant foot soldiers. This self-destruction could be said to have been in vain. The only benefit was the large number of alien corpses it left on the battlefield, convenient for Lin Zikan to devour. You have absorbed a large amount of the cat salamander demon's life origin, gaining the biometric attribute high-level agility. High-level agility, your sensory perception receives a significant boost. You have absorbed a large amount of the cat salamander demon's origin force, converting it to chi blood and spirit, increasing your chi blood strength and spiritual strength. You have absorbed a large amount of the void vine snake's life origin, gaining the biometric attribute high-level stealth. High-level stealth, you can perfectly blend into any environment to hide from enemies. Lin Zikan wasted no time, swiftly moving across the battlefield to devour alien corpses and absorb the origin force within to accelerate his evolutionary progress. Elsewhere, Ye Yongsheng looked at the center of the white-haired old man's self-explosion, feeling a residual fear and a chill of what might have been. Had he not instantly hardened his body with special materials, by now he would probably have been severely wounded by the force of the old man's self-destruction. Zhongqing, I didn't expect you to go this far, willing to sacrifice your life for the future of the human race. Too bad you died in vain. Your self-destruction didn't hurt me in the slightest. Ye Yongsheng's mouth curled into a sardonic smile, an expression of mockery on his face. After mocking the dead old man with white hair, his gaze quickly shifted to Lin Zikan in the distance, his eyes revealing a hint of fervor. Lin Zikan's physical body possessed far too many unimaginable abilities, undoubtedly a form of the mythical level. Once he obtained Lin Zikan's body, reaching the mythical level creature status would be within his grasp. Your body is strong, but it will soon be mine. Ye Yongsheng muttered to himself before his body turned into a shadow, rushing at the greatest speed toward Lin Zikan, who was engulfing corpses on the ground. The city leaders behind him, seeing this, did not bother to treat the internal injuries they had just suffered from the old man's self-destruction, and immediately chased after him in rapid succession. They had all witnessed Lin Zikan's remarkably rapid evolution and knew the importance of Lin Zikan. Without any mishaps, Lin Zikan would be the future of the human race. Therefore, they must protect Lin Zikan at all costs now. Even if it meant self-destruction, they would not hesitate. On the ground, Lin Zikan frantically devoured alien corpses. The speed of absorption was comparable to a plague of locusts passing through. In just a moment, the alien corpses on the ground had been completely devoured. After engulfing the corpse of a wood elf, a piece of text prompt information slowly emerged from the void deep in his mind. Your biological level has successfully evolved from Legendary First Order to Legendary Second Order. Legendary Second Order. Looking at the prompt in the void, Lin Zikin felt a surge of excitement. If facing Ye Yongsheng at Legendary First Order left him somewhat uncertain, now that he had reached Legendary Second Order, he was brimming with confidence. Buzz! Suddenly, a loud tearing sound broke the silence. The moment he heard the sound, Lin Zikin sensed that it was Ye Yongsheng coming for him. Without the slightest hesitation, he promptly unleashed both his chi blood and spirit to burst forth, rocketing into the sky from where he stood at the fastest speed possible, to distance himself as much as he could from the city. He wanted to move the forthcoming battle from inside the city to outside, to avoid involving Shen King Han. So fast! Observing Lin Zikin blink and soar from the ground, reaching a dangerous area dozens of miles outside the city within moments, Ye Yongsheng couldn't hide his shock. Lin Zikin's speed was too fast. Fast to the point where even Ye Yongsheng, at the high biological level of Legendary Ninth Order, was momentarily struck dumb and found it unbelievable. The speed Lin Zikin was displaying didn't seem like that of a newly promoted legendary level expert but rather that of a high-ranking legendary expert. It wasn't only Ye Yongsheng who was shocked, but also the leaders in the city. What special abilities must Lin Zikin's body possess to be so strong that it defies all logic? As Ye Yongsheng chased after Lin Zikin at high speed, his mind was full of curiosity. The same curiosity was present in the hearts of the leaders following from the city. Upon witnessing Lin Zikin's astonishing speed, all of these leaders were visibly shocked, their minds filled with confusion and questions. They had spent many years in the Origin Land and had seen all sorts of evolution geniuses that stood out through the ages, but never had they seen an evolution genius like Lin Zikin, who completely defied all reason. About 10 seconds later, Lin Zikin, who had just been in the city, had now appeared thousands of miles away in a different territory. This territory was an endless ocean. The surface was calm, but beneath raged undercurrents. Lin Zikin chose this place to confront Ye Yongsheng because if he couldn't win, he could still run. The sea was vast and mysterious, limitless and unfathomable. The likelihood of successfully fleeing via water was much greater than that of escaping over land. Buzz! A sharp breaking sound rang out. 2 seconds after Lin Zikin stopped above the sea, Ye Yongsheng caught up. He hovered above the sea surface several hundred meters from Lin Zikin, at a height quite a bit higher, perfectly positioning him with an advantageous angle for looking down from above. I'm really curious how at just 20 years old, you evolved into a legendary level creature. You can gain evolutionary benefits from corpses, can't you? Ye Yongsheng, from his elevated position, looked down at Lin Zikin, not attacking him immediately. He was not in a hurry. He could sense that the wood god's side was prevailing in the central region, and there were no mythical level experts free to interfere here. Most importantly, he wanted to learn as much as possible about Lin Zikin before proceeding with the soul possession. This way, once the possession was successful, he would save a lot of effort and time getting to know the unfamiliar body. Buzz! 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 Seconds later, a succession of swift breaking sounds followed one after another. The group of slower city leaders arrived one by one in the sky above the sea, gathering together across from Ye Yongsheng. Facing these former subordinates, Ye Yongsheng was filled with disdain, not taking them seriously at all. In this world, only mythical level creatures caught his eye. A mere group of legendary level creatures was no different from ants in his view. Lin Zikin, you go first, get as far away as you can. Leave this traitor to us to deal with. The leading city official, with a booming and powerful voice, looked towards Lin Zikin and shouted. He felt that teaming up to kill Ye Yongsheng was unreal. The only feasible option was for him and his colleagues to fight to the death holding off Ye Yongsheng, creating a chance for Lin Zikin to escape. Facing the city officials' kind intentions, Lin Zikin just calmly said, "No thanks, running away is a temporary solution, not a permanent cure. I think it's better to join forces and deal with this traitor." The only feasible option was for him and his colleagues to fight to the death, holding off Ya Yongsheng, creating a chance for Lin Zikin to escape. Facing the city officials' kind intentions, Lin Zikin just calmly said, "No thanks, running away is a temporary solution, not a permanent cure. I think it's better to join forces and deal with this traitor. P.S. Placing my bowl out here, asking for monthly pass and recommendation tickets." Chapter 512, 294, Ya Yongsheng? Blown away with a punch. After he said they should join forces to deal with Ya Yongsheng, Lin Zikin's thoughts moved and he activated the biometric attribute Flame Breath, instantly igniting the entire sea surface below his feet. The sea beneath him, containing rich origin force, provided an endless supply of fuel for the crimson flames. The flames grew stronger and stronger. In just a moment, it escalated into a sea of fire. It emitted an extremely high temperature, so hot that even the air seemed to evaporate. Lin Zikin possessed the biometric attribute Rebirth in Flames, which allowed him to resurrect infinitely as long as he was in a fiery environment, greatly increasing his fault tolerance. Now in a sea of fire, he was filled with a sense of security. On the other side, Ya Yongsheng and a group of city leaders were somewhat baffled. They did not understand what Lin Zikin was doing. Why would he ignite the entire sea surface for no reason? However, these were not the focal points. The key question was, how did Lin Zikin manage to ignite the entire surface of the sea instantly? He was clearly a pure-blood human, without any exotic beast gene in his body, so how did he come to possess so many incredible abilities? At this moment, not only did Ya Yongsheng gaze at Lin Zikin with greed, but even among the city leaders, some couldn't help but develop a sinister thought. Lin Zikin's body was too miraculous. If they could dissect his body and understand the special reasons behind it, perhaps they could find a new direction on their nearly exhausted evolution path. Between legendary level and mythical level, there lies the most significant disparity in biological levels. Legendary level creatures have a lifespan limit. Mythical level creatures do not. To evolve into a mythical level creature is fatally tempting for any legendary level creature. The temptation is so great that it could challenge one's very humanity. After steadying his emotions, Ya Yongsheng looked down at the sea of fire below, and with a thought, dispersed a vast amount of spiritual power to extinguish the flames. Although unclear about Lin Zikin's purpose for igniting the whole sea surface, Ya believed it must hold some unknown benefit for Lin Zikin. Otherwise, Lin Zikin wouldn't have done so. Based on that, extinguishing the fire quickly was undoubtedly the right move. However, the red flames burning on the sea were much harder to handle than expected. No matter if he tried to cut off the air supply or draw away the water from the surface, the crimson flames kept burning relentlessly, showing no signs of weakening or extinguishing. Ya Yongsheng frowned slightly at this. What's going on? Why can't the fire be extinguished? Ya Yongsheng was completely puzzled. He couldn't understand why he, just one step away from the mythical level, couldn't extinguish the fire produced by Lin Zikin, a newly advanced legendary level creature. Moreover, during the earlier pursuit of Lin Zikin, his own speed wasn't much faster than Lin Zikin's. The distance kept widening. In the short term, there was no hope of catching up. Had Lin Zikin not stopped on his own, it would likely have taken quite a while to catch up. In theory, given the significant disparity in biological levels between them, he should have been able to catch up instantly. To chase for so long without catching up, it made no sense. What exactly was special about Lin Zikin's body that allowed him to be so powerful as to be unimaginable? With these doubts, Ya Yongsheng looked expressionlessly at Lin Zikin and said calmly, "Classmate Lin, your body truly possesses too many unbelievable abilities. Each ability alone has the semblance of the mythical. Given time, You are destined to verify as a mythical level creature and become the hope of the human race. However, you are still too young and lack sufficient understanding of evolution. It will be difficult for you to maximize the potential of such a body. Hand your body over to me, and let me develop it to its ultimate potential for you. Let me become the hope of the human race for you. This traitor is also worthy. Before Lin Zikin could respond, a bald city official, his face full of rage, hurled abuse at Ye Yongsheng. Ye Yongsheng heard the cursing but chose to ignore it completely, his attention fixated on Lin Zikin. Although all these former subordinates around him were legendary level creatures, and had sacrificed their essence blood to greatly enhance their own strength, they were still but ants to the fully transformed Ye Yongsheng, who had become an exotic beast. He didn't need to pay any mind to them and could simply act as if they didn't exist. His main belief was that if one was strong enough, one could disregard everyone else. What do you mean by hand over your body? Lin Zikin looked at Ye Yongsheng in front of him, furiously harnessing the qi blood and spirit within his body, while calmly asking him. Ye Yongsheng's face was as tranquil as an ancient well as he said, "There's no need to explain." The moment after he spoke, his figure flashed, and he disappeared from his original spot in an instant. When he reappeared, he was right in front of Lin Zikin, within an arm's reach. So fast! A shock went through Lin Zikin's heart. He hadn't expected Ye Yongsheng, with his massive body, to be capable of such speed. A speed so fast that he couldn't begin to react in time. Buzz! A sharp whooshing sound filled the air. Ye Yongsheng swung his massive fist, laden with endless blood qi power, and ferociously aimed a punch at Lin Zikin's head. This earth-shattering punch was only at the strength of the 5th order legendary level. The goal was to test Lin Zikin's strength, not to seriously injure him. He was worried that a full-force punch from himself would turn Lin Zikin into a mist of blood on the spot, causing his instant demise. That was not the outcome he wanted to see. What he desired was to possess Lin Zikin's body. Therefore, he had to ensure the physical integrity of Lin Zikin's body as much as possible. It would be best to use mental attacks to erode Lin Zikin's will. That way, his body wouldn't be harmed. But before that, it was necessary to test the strength of Lin Zikin's body to get a preliminary understanding of the body with mythical attributes that he was about to possess. Buzz! As the fist drew closer, the whooshing sound grew louder and louder. Lin Zikin initially wanted to dodge, but sensing the power of Ye Yongsheng's punch, it didn't seem as formidable as he had imagined. So, he decided not to dodge and instead met the blow head-on, driving his own vast blood qi power into the collision. Quickly! The sound of an explosion, boom, resonated loudly. Both fists, cloaked in blood qi power, collided with each other, each carrying a ferocious energy. In an instant, a terrifying shockwave spread violently from between the two of them. The shockwave passed through. The air itself was shattered into large web-like cracks. Its power was immense. It was so immense that even nearby city officials were sent flying several meters, with the total loss of face. Legendary-level experts, to be sent flying by the shockwave produced by a 20-year-old young man clashing with another, was utterly humiliating. The terrifying shockwave lasted for less than a few seconds before it completely dissipated. At the moment the shockwave vanished, a massive figure was flung away at high speed. Sparks flew in the high sky, tearing open numerous rifts through the void. The city officials present immediately turned their attention to the figure that had been sent flying. When they finally recognized the face, each one of them showed a look of shock and disbelief. The person sent flying was Ye Yongsheng, the traitor? What was happening? How did Lin Zikin manage that? The punch that Ye Yongsheng had launched just before had a force much greater than that of a low-level legendary. Most of those present couldn't withstand it. However, Lin Zikin not only withstood it but also managed to send Ye Yongsheng flying in return. Such a staggering challenge against higher levels left the city leaders utterly perplexed, causing a tumult of amazement and disbelief in their minds. P.S. Split into 2 chapters, the next will be updated around noon tomorrow. Chapter 513, 295, All members self-destruct. Just to kill Ye Yongsheng. 1000 meters. 2000 meters. 3000 meters. 4000 meters. 4396 meters. Ye Yongsheng was sent flying for thousands of meters before he barely stabilized his figure and hovered in the air. The power of Lin Zikin's punch had been far beyond his imagination. It surpassed the fifth order of the legendary level, already reaching the high order of the legendary level. Just evolved to the legendary level and already able to unleash the strength of the high order of the legendary level? Is this really a human? From thousands of meters away, Ye Yongsheng quietly watched Lin Zikin, who had just exchanged a punch with him, his face filled with shock. He knew Lin Zikin was extraordinary, capable of easily killing enemies above his level. Thus, the punch he just threw was full of power, reaching the fifth order of the legendary level, enough to severely injure or even kill any of the city leaders present. However, such a devastating punch was sent flying by Lin Zikin in the recent clash. He had thought that by unleashing a punch at the fifth order of the legendary level, he was already overestimating Lin Zikin. Unexpectedly, Lin Zikin's strength was beyond his imagination. Although he had just evolved into a legendary level creature, his strength was already at the high order of the legendary level. This made him seem no longer like an earthling. He could not be called a human. Because even the native alien race of the origin land had never seen anyone as defyingly exaggerated as Lin Zikin. Buzz! A sharp breaking sound exploded. Lin Zikin's entire body's blood chi power erupted, as he actively charged towards Ye Yongsheng. The city leaders who were still shocked followed suit, their blood chi power erupted as they charged towards Ye Yongsheng. Originally, these city leaders had planned to risk their lives to hold off Ye Yongsheng to give Lin Zikin a chance to escape. But now, having witnessed Lin Zikin's formidable strength, their thoughts had changed. Their thoughts were no longer about holding off Ye Yongsheng to create an escape opportunity for Lin Zikin, but to assist Lin Zikin in killing Ye Yongsheng, the traitor. Buzz! 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 A series of breaking sounds echoed across the sky. With Lin Zikin leading and nearly 10 city leaders supporting, they transformed into a stream of light, racing towards Ye Yongsheng, thousands of meters away. This time, Ye Yongsheng dared not underestimate his opponents. Instantly, his entire body's blood chi power and spirit erupted, boosting his strength to its highest. Though he was proud by nature and did not regard creatures below the mythical level, this did not mean he would ignore risks due to pride. When there was a certain risk in the situation, he immediately entered a state of absolute focus. Boom! Massive amounts of blood chi power continuously dissipated, creating a roaring sound that echoed through the sky. As the roar sounded, Lin Zikin, surrounded by the blood chi power, instantly charged from a distance of thousands of meters to in front of Ye Yongsheng. Then, with an immense amount of blood chi power, he raised his hand and fiercely punched at Ye Yongsheng. The moment the punch was thrown, the vast blood chi power transformed into a red dragon, carrying the sound of dragon chants and crashed towards Ye Yongsheng with an earth-shattering force. Facing such a terrifying punch, Ye Yongsheng showed no intention of dodging. He chose to gather most of his body's blood chi power in his fist and, with the force of a thunderbolt, furiously threw a punch back, clashing with Lin Zikin once again. This time, the power of his punch reached the seventh order of the legendary level. Quickly! Only a loud bang was heard. The fists of Lin Zikin and Ye Yongsheng violently collided, causing a tremendous noise as a terrifying shockwave instantly spread out. Everywhere the shockwave passed, the air was visibly shaken into a horrifying net-like pattern, filled with cracks. During this, the city leaders who had been following closely behind Lin Zikin were all blown away by the shockwave, completely powerless to resist. They were all high and mighty, legendary-level experts looking down upon the world. But at this moment, in the fierce confrontation between Lin Zikin and Ye Yongsheng, they didn't even qualify to participate. They could only be blown away by the terrifying shockwaves produced by the clash of fists, serving as a testament to the intensity of this battle. Boom! 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 The explosions kept booming in rapid succession. With a massive enhancement of biometric attributes, Lin Zikin unleashed punches that far exceeded his own biological level, exchanging blow after blow with Ya Yongsheng, who was a 9th order legendary level creature, without being overshadowed. Initially, Ya Yongsheng only used the power of a 7th order legendary level to exchange blows, but after a few punches, he realized that even after elevating his power to that level, he was still no match for Lin Zikin. This realization shocked and thrilled Ya Yongsheng. This physical body is incredibly strong. It's like the physical sanctification described in myths. Soul possession. I must possess this body. No one can stop me from taking it over. Fueled by this intense emotion, Ya Yongsheng gradually increased the power of his punches, testing the limits of Lin Zikin's physique. 7th order legendary level. 7th order legendary level great perfection. 8th order legendary level. 8th order legendary level great perfection. It wasn't until his punch power reached the 8th order legendary level great perfection that Ya Yongsheng began gaining the upper hand, overpowering Lin Zikin, who started struggling to cope. Crack crack crack. Amid the deafening clash of punches, the minute sound of something hard breaking could discreetly be heard. In the storm of blows, Lin Zikin's finger bones began to crack, then severely shatter to the extent that his entire fist deformed, bursting into a cloud of blood. If this continued, his wrists, arms, and even shoulders would burst into blood. In the face of this, Lin Zikin felt no hesitation but continued to exchange punches with Ya Yongsheng. While clashing, he frenetically used his spiritual power to activate his self-healing biometric attributes and constantly repaired the damage to his body. Unfortunately, however swift his body's healing ability, it ultimately wasn't fast enough to counteract the simple yet brutal damage Ya Yongsheng was inflicting on him. When they had exchanged nearly 100,000 punches, boom! A terrifying clash exploded vehemently. Subsequently, Lin Zikin was hurled backward at high speed, bleeding from all orifices, with his internal organs dislocated, suffering extremely severe internal injuries, and losing most of his combat abilities in an instant. Not far away, the leadership team that hadn't been able to intervene watched as this unfolded. Ya Yongsheng and Lin Zikin were exchanging blows. Lin Zikin was losing ground. One leader after another in the city detonated themselves. Ya Yongsheng was severely injured. Lin Zikin desperately made a finishing move. Ya Yongsheng, realizing he was too injured to win, could only merge with the essence blood of the Night King residing within him. As a result, he was possessed by the Night King. The Night King, who had previously been killed by Qi King Mo, was reborn. Lin Zikin couldn't beat him. He was killed in one confrontation. Rebirth in flames. The Night King perceived the subtlety, felt a bit shocked, then unleashed the great dark sky to extinguish the fire. Lin Zikin escaped into the sea. Deep in the sea, Lin Zikin saw a palace of water god. What's going on? Wasn't the palace of water god inside Han Han's sea of consciousness? Elsewhere. Shen King Han was also stunned. She actually saw Lin Zikin inside her own sea of consciousness. P.S. August is over, which means the summer vacation is ending, and I'm finally less busy. I hope to increase the update frequency in September. Chapter 514, 296, The Final Battle. After Lin Zikin was sent flying with a punch, Ya Yongsheng finally managed to gauge Lin Zikin's limit. A flesh body of legendary 2nd order, capable of exerting strength between legendary 8th order and legendary 8th order great perfection. The extent of the difference was a whole 6 levels. Truly a flesh body to drool over for 3 feet. This flesh body will be mine soon. Carrying this overwhelmingly excited mood, Ya Yongsheng erupted his blood, qi and spirit, pursuing the flying Lin Zikin with the fastest speed. Lin Zikin's bodily limit had been tested. Now, he aimed to use spiritual techniques to erase Lin Zikin's will from his flesh body and replace it with his own. Buzz! 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 A series of rushed breaking sounds suddenly erupted. Several people, led by a woman with over-the-shoulder hair, flew in front of Ye Yongsheng to block his path, preventing him from pursuing Lin Zikin further. Seeing this, a look of disdain appeared on Ye Yongsheng's face. A bunch of overestimating ants, all of you disappear. As the words fell, his giant wings ferociously swept out. The next second, a vast expanse of dark airflow appeared out of nowhere in front of him, sweeping towards the people blocking the road with a world-destroying force. Facing this fatal attack, the woman with over-the-shoulder hair didn't show the slightest intention to dodge, standing still with resolute eyes. Waiting until the blood qi surged to in front of her, when she was the closest to Ye Yongsheng. The woman with over-the-shoulder hair shouted to the people behind her. Explode now! The moment her voice fell, the woman's body rapidly swelled, her skin bursting open with countless horrifying cracks, leaking vast and powerful blood qi power. Then, the next second, only a boom sound was heard. The woman's body completely exploded, transforming into a terrifying wave of energy that spread rapidly, indiscriminately attacking everything within the blast radius, causing the air itself to burst into a web-like pattern. Almost at the same time, the few people behind the woman also steeled their hearts and followed suit with self-detonations. Boom! 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 A series of sounds akin to nuclear explosions followed one after another, causing the entire southern domain to tremble. During this time, the massive explosion, accompanied by a sky full of anomalies, was as if the end of the world had arrived, plunging all the creatures within the southern domain into a state of panic. On the other side, Lin Zikin, who had just been sent flying tens of thousands of meters by a punch from Ye Yongsheng, finally managed to stop himself with difficulty. At this moment, he was bleeding from the 7 orifices, his soul was in turmoil, and he was extremely badly wounded. If it were any ordinary legendary level creature that had suffered such severe injuries and had no external help, it would take years to recover. Luckily for him, his constitution was rather special, possessing various self-healing biometric attributes. In just a short moment, the wounds on his body had already fully healed, restoring him to perfect condition, with no signs of having ever been injured. After stabilizing his body condition slightly, Lin Zikin, aided by the eye of the sky and danger perception, stared at the direction where Ye Yongsheng was located from the tens of thousands of meters away. Instantly, what he saw was an utter devastation. The air had burst, dust was everywhere. The energy within was chaotic and extremely unstable. It felt like a thundercloud that could produce violent energy fluctuations at any moment. This was the residual force left by the simultaneous self-detonations of several legendary-level experts, still containing terrifying energy, so terrifying that even Lin Zikin, who was tens of thousands of meters away, felt his heart tremble with fear. The simultaneous self-detonations of several legendary-level experts are indeed terrifying. I just don't know how much damage this has caused to that traitor Ye Yongsheng. Lin Zikin muttered to himself while carefully observing the situation on Ye Yongsheng's side. However, the energy fluctuations over there were now too great. Even with the aid of the eye of the sky and danger perception, he couldn't see or perceive anything. For safety, Lin Zikin did not choose to approach immediately. Instead, his blood qi and spirit burst forth simultaneously, flying towards the direction of the surviving leaders of the city. The recent self-destruction had sacrificed over half of the city's leaders. Now, the only leaders left alive in the city were 4. Their biological levels, ranked from highest to lowest, were Legendary 3rd Order, Legendary 2nd Order, Legendary 1st Order Great Perfection, and Legendary 1st Order. These 4 city leaders relatively valued their lives more and didn't join the self-destruction. Lin Zikin could understand such a decision. If it were him, he most likely wouldn't have self-destructed either. He would have chosen to preserve himself as the first priority, keeping his life to protect his family. Lin classmate, are your injuries serious? Just as Lin Zikin landed beside those 4 city leaders, one of them voiced their concern. With one person speaking up, the other 3 turned to look at Lin Zikin. The state Lin Zikin was in would determine the trend of the ensuing operation against Ye Yongsheng. If Lin Zikin was severely injured and in a very bad condition, then there was no point for the 4 of them to stay and face death. Unless Ye Yongsheng, who had endured self-destruction from several legendary-level experts, was more seriously wounded than Lin Zikin. Facing everyone's concern, Lin Zikin calmly stated, "I've already fully self-healed." Fully self-healed? The city leader who had just expressed concern watched as Lin Zikin, with an indifferent expression, said so, and disbelief spread across his face. He had seen Ye Yongshen's punch with his own eyes and felt its immense power. Without any exaggeration, that punch had enough might to turn a legendary middle order, or even a 7th order expert, into a mist of blood. Yet such a powerful punch was withstood by Lin Zikin, who had come out unscathed afterward. How formidable must one's physique be to achieve that? It would require at least the level of a legendary 8th order. With this thought, the leader's heart was overwhelmed with shock, and at the same time, he felt a surge of excitement. If Lin Zikin had that strength, and considering Ye Yongsheng had just been impacted face first by the self-destruction of several legendary-level experts, most likely sustaining severe injuries, the prospect of victory had significantly increased. Killing Ye Yongsheng no longer seemed like a low-probability event. If Ye Yongsheng was severely injured, they might even manage to kill him without harm. Lin Zikin noticed that the expressions on the faces of the 4 city leaders beside him had relaxed considerably, and he guessed what they were thinking. However, he didn't mind, as all his attention was focused on the area of energy fluctuations up ahead. About 10 seconds passed. The energy in that area gradually stabilized. At the same time, under the enhancement of the eye of the sky and danger perception, Lin Zikin began to sense specific details about that area. In the center of the area, he saw a figure with chi blood continuously spilling out. Upon closer inspection, it was Ye Yongsheng. At this point, Ye Yongsheng no longer displayed his previously commanding presence. His entire body was battered, and his aura had substantially weakened. Seeing this, Lin Zikin immediately spent spiritual power to enhance the effect of the biometric attribute danger perception and spied on Ye Yongshen's current biological information. The next moment, the details about Ye Yongshen's biological information rapidly materialized in the void. Chi blood strength legendary 8th order. Spiritual strength legendary 8th order. Alien race genes activation level 100%. Other biometric attributes. Lin Zikin quickly read through the biological information in the void, and upon seeing that Ye Yongshen's chi blood strength and spiritual strength had both declined to the legendary 8th order, he was invigorated. Legendary 8th order. This traitorous vice-governor's biological level had dropped to legendary 8th order. There was a chance to kill him. P.S. There will be one more chapter around 2 a.m. Chapter 515, 297, Vice-Governor Ye Yongsheng fell. Sensing that Ye Yongsheng was seriously injured and his strength was greatly reduced, Lin Zikin felt a surge of excitement in his heart. As he was considering his next move in the battle, debating whether to go all out for a swift resolution or to engage in a steady fight. Buzz! An explosive sound of breaking through the air resounded. In the moment the sound ceased, the previously disheveled Ye Yongsheng, who had been hovering in front, flashed behind Lin Zikin in the next second, stepping through the void. So fast! Lin Zikin's heart sank as his nerves instantly tensed up. He hadn't expected Ye Yongsheng, with his severe injuries, to be capable of such high speed. Shocked, Lin Zikin had a thought and his chi blood and spirit surged to their peak, propelling him forward at the fastest speed to create distance from Ye Yongsheng, who had suddenly appeared behind him. Before he got far, he sensed a terrifying fluctuation of energy from behind him. The presence of energy fluctuations was something he had expected. What surprised him, however, was that the wave of energy coming from behind wasn't aimed at him. At that moment, he realized something. Ye Yongshen's target wasn't him. It was the 4 city leaders behind him. Realizing this, Lin Zikin immediately turned around and fiercely charged backwards, determined to stop Ye Yongsheng from going after the 4 city leaders. Unfortunately, it was all too late, there was no time. Before he could fully turn around, Ye Yongsheng had already brutally devoured the 4 city leaders into the gaping maw that split open on his chest, crushing them into flesh and blood and swallowing them whole. From beginning to end, the 4 city leaders didn't even have a chance to scream before being swallowed alive. Ye Yongsheng, having devoured the 4 city leaders, no longer looked as pale as before, showing a bit more color in his face. But his chi blood strength and spiritual strength remained at the legendary level 8th order. Even though he had devoured 4 legendary level experts, the replenishment of energy to his body was but a drop in the bucket. It wasn't enough to restore his strength. At best, it just made his physical condition somewhat better. Now, there are no more annoying flies to hinder me with their self-destruction. Ye Yongsheng opened his bloodshot eyes and somewhat creepily said with a smirk, or if you dare, you can choose to self-destruct too. He wasn't afraid of Lin Zikin resorting to self-destruction at all. Those city leaders who had previously self-destructed were almost all at the end of their evolution path, with not much life left. If they died, they died. But Lin Zikin was different. This guy, only 20 years old yet possessing legendary high-order strength, had evolution potential so great it was immeasurable. Without any unexpected setbacks, he was 100% guaranteed to evolve into a mythical level creature with boundless lifespan. Such a future prospect, a world-shaking evolutionary genius, would certainly not be willing to perish in vain through self-destruction. Why would I self-destruct? Lin Zikin looked squarely at Ye Yongsheng with an unusually calm voice. Before you were blasted, I might have been a little less powerful than you, but now, it's still uncertain whose the deer falls by. Ye Yongsheng couldn't help but laugh. Oh, the youth are so arrogant, without any understanding of the word experience. Dealing with a young man who is only 20 years old like you, even if my strength is similar to yours now, even if my strength was 1 level below yours, I could easily crush you with my far superior combat experience. Next, experience what is known as the craftiness of an old ginger. The moment his words ended, Ye Yongsheng furiously flapped his enormous wings, instantly flashing forward, transforming into a dark streak of light rushing towards Lin Zikin ahead. Lin Zikin was prepared for this. The instant Ye Yongsheng rushed forward at extreme speed, Lin Zikin's chi blood erupted as well, turning into a crimson streak of light, rushing head-on towards the high-speed Ye Yongsheng. Very quickly, only a loud boom was heard. The 2 streaks of light collided fiercely, causing the air to vibrate intensely, bursting forth with a world-shaking glow and sound. Afterward, the 2 figures were both sent flying backward, each sustaining varying degrees of serious injury. Among them, Lin Zikin took a greater impact and was sent flying further away. With the city leaders either dead from self-destruction or devoured, none were left. This rendered Lin Zikin's biometric attribute social animal useless, consequently reducing his strength, which just happened to be 1 level below that of Ye Yongsheng. But the good news was that other biometric attributes, such as lethal venom, hallucination, confusion, and so on, which previously couldn't inflict effective damage on Ye Yongsheng, were now starting to take obvious effect after he suffered heavy injuries. On the other side, Ye Yongsheng, just after ending the clash with Lin Zikin, was covered in negative statuses. Poisoning, hallucination, dizziness, paralysis, stiffness, and so on. With the accumulative weakening from these negative statuses, Ye Yongsheng's strength was rapidly declining. Both his chi blood strength and spiritual strength had plummeted from legendary level 8th order to the great perfection of legendary level 7th order, and he was swiftly sliding down towards 7th order. What's going on? Why is my body experiencing so many negative statuses? Did his attack cause this? Ye Yongsheng, while staring at Lin Zikin in the distance, felt the various negative statuses taking over his body, with a rare sense of panic emerging in his heart. If the negative statuses on him were indeed caused by Lin Zikin's attacks, then the upcoming battle would become difficult to handle. Now that his raw strength had regressed to be less than Lin Zikin's, he could only rely on years of combat experience to bridge the gap and even possibly to get ahead. However, if Lin Zikin's attacks could inflict the target with negative statuses, then his advantage in experience would become an insufficient supplement to the strength gap with Lin Zikin. Chapter 516, 297, Vice-Governor Ye Yongsheng has fallen _2. Just as Ye Yongsheng was lost in thought. Buzz! A sudden, urgent breaking sound pierced the air. It was Lin Zikin attacking once again. The recalibrated Lin Zikin transformed into a crimson streak of light brighter than before, charging at Ye Yongsheng with an unstoppable force. Ye Yongsheng wanted to dodge, unwilling to clash head-on with Lin Zikin at full firepower. Unfortunately, now burdened with various debuffs, whether reaction speed or dodging ability, all was significantly reduced. He simply couldn't evade Lin Zikin, who was as fast as lightning. Left with no choice, he had to abandon any attempt to dodge Lin Zikin's full-strength strike and opted to stand his ground and shield himself, preparing to harden himself against Lin Zikin's attack. The next instant, boom! An earth-shattering collision resounded once more. This time, a better-conditioned Lin Zikin held the absolute advantage, engulfing Ye Yongsheng with an overwhelming blood chi power and sending him flying with a punch. Boom! Another loud bang followed. Ye Yongsheng, blasted away by the punch, smashed heavily into the sea aflame with crimson fires and sank to the ocean floor. As he sank, the severity of his various debuffs rapidly intensified. His chi blood strength and spiritual strength were plummeting swiftly. In the blink of an eye, his biological level slid to legendary 7th order, then to the great perfection of legendary 6th order, and further regressed to legendary 6th order. He officially deteriorated from a high-order legendary creature to a middle-order legendary creature. His power greatly diminished. He became the weakling and ant he once looked down upon in his former days. It was indeed his attack that caused this. How did he manage to do this? He is clearly a pure-blood human, without a trace of alien race genes in him. How can he possess so many unique biometric attributes? What secrets are hidden inside his body? I must take possession of this body. As Ye Yongsheng sank to the ocean floor, his mind raced with urgency, his eyes filled with desire. The incredible physique of Lin Zikin, unbelievably strong, held a fatal allure for him, making him obsess over it, constantly craving to take possession through soul possession. Just as he yearned desperately. Thud! A massive sound of water breaking erupted. Lin Zikin, now a red streak of light, dove into the sea with boundless blood chi power, rapidly descending following Ye Yongsheng's trail. He intended to finish off Ye Yongsheng while he was down, giving the traitor no chance to recover and to prevent any unexpected developments. Ye Yongsheng, already descended thousands of meters, sensed Lin Zikin rapidly diving down to deliver the coup de grace. In response, Ye Yongsheng smirked with a hint of resentment, "You forced my hand." With that thought, he quickly tapped his chest 3 times. Each tap carried a small amount of blood chi power and spiritual power, as if activating something. Right after the 3rd tap the next instant, a drop of long-sealed essence blood within the deep recesses of his mutated colossal heart began to stir vibrantly, revitalizing. This was a drop of essence blood from the mythical level creature, the Night King. It was his reward from the Night King for having schemed against a legendary high-order expert of the human race, who had the potential of a myth, and having accomplished a great feat. It was essence blood personally condensed by the Night King himself. A creature that merged with this drop could temporarily possess the strength of the Night King. Possess the strength of a mythical level expert. The cost was, the mutations occurring in one's body during the process might not be completely reversible afterwards. Moreover, there was a certain risk during the fusion. The physical body might not withstand the immense energy contained in the essence blood, leading to the body bursting apart. As the Night King's essence blood was activated, very soon, the essence blood of the Night King transformed into warming currents, swiftly flowing through Ya Yongshen's entire body, fortifying every cell within him. Under the enhancement of the Night King's essence blood, Ya Yongsheng could clearly perceive his biological level escalating rapidly. Great perfection of Legendary 6th Order, Legendary 7th Order, 8th Order, 9th Order, Mythical 1st Order. In just a blink of an eye, Ya Yongshen's biological level had evolved from Legendary 6th Order to the mythical level he had long dreamed of. The biological pressure emanating from his body was unprecedentedly powerful. Just by silently hovering in the water motionless, he automatically created a life-forbidden zone around him, pushing away all life forms within its range. At the same time, all the previous negative states on his body vanished. All that remained was a formidable energy so potent that it was entrapping. Is this the power of a mythical level creature? Good, really good. Such fascinatingly formidable strength. Ya Yongshen's face was covered with a sinister smile, and the aura emanating from his body bore a resemblance to that of the Night King, becoming more similar as time passed. Elsewhere, the rapidly diving Lin Zikan immediately sensed that the strength of the aura emanating from Ya Yongsheng was unusually strong, with his danger perception constantly throbbing. Something's wrong. This traitor's state is very wrong. Must not get close to him. Lin Zikan acutely realized this and instantly turned tail and fled without a second word. With the augmentation of blessing of melting water and other water-related biometric attributes, his speed was like a shooting star. In the blink of an eye, he covered dozens of miles underwater, widening the distance from Ya Yongsheng. He didn't choose to break through the water to flee by land or air, but traveled at high speed all the way on the seabed. There are many obstacles on the ocean floor and energy is mixed, which can affect perception. It's better suited for desperate flight. Futile escape. Ya Yongsheng muttered expressionlessly. Then, with just a thought, his massive body instantly transformed into a pitch-black streak of light, chasing after the fleeing Lin Zikan at a speed fast enough to break through the void. Ahead, Lin Zikan was diving extremely fast. His body nearly dissolved into the water, advancing at tens of miles per second. Just when he thought he could smoothly escape to safety, a force so powerful it could terrorize all living beings suddenly appeared close behind him. Before he could react to what was happening, this force surged above him, and a huge beastly claw reached down and grabbed at him ferociously. Lin Zikan instinctively tried to dodge. But the claw struck so swiftly that before he could even move, it had already grasped him, binding his body as tightly as handcuffs would. Next, a horrifying upward pull suddenly burst forth, propelling him towards the surface of the sea. Boom! A thunderous sound that pierced the sky exploded. Ya Yongsheng, who had evolved to mythical level and completely transformed into one of the alien races, grabbed Lin Zikan with one claw and broke through the surface of the water, hanging high in the air. Lin Zikan frantically surged his chi blood and spirit, pushing his power to nearly reach the great perfection of Legendary 8th Order, trying to break free from the grasp of Ya Yongshen's claw. However, even so, he was unable to escape in the slightest. A mythical level creature is too powerful, simply beyond what a legendary level creature can resist. As a result, he was possessed by the Night King. The Night King, who had been killed by Qi King Mo before, was reborn. Lin Zikan couldn't defeat him. He was killed at the first encounter. Rebirth in flames. The Night King saw the profundity, was somewhat shocked, then great dark sky and extinguished the fire. Lin Zikan escaped into the depths of the sea. Deep under the sea, Lin Zikan saw a fragment of the Palace of Water God. What's going on? Wasn't the Palace of Water God in Han Sea of Consciousness? Elsewhere, Shen King Han was also stunned. She actually saw Lin Zikin in her own sea of consciousness. In Shen Qinghan's sea of consciousness, Lin Zikin was being chased by the Night King. Controlling the palace of Water God, he killed the Night King who had revived in Ye Yongshen's body. Lin Zikin chose to head towards city number 36 in the southern domain. City number 36, connected to Shanghai City. Worried it won't hold. Yuan Dongji had just recovered and joined the battle. Many people were present. Yuan Dongji, Lu Chuanwu, Song Yuan, and others. Yuan Dongji was gravely injured, not yet fully healed. In the sky above the central region, the sounds of a great battle were heard from time to time. A towering tree reached through the clouds. At this moment, outside city number 36, a great battle was underway. The feeling was that the city couldn't hold out. P.S. Begging bowl out, seeking monthly pass recommendations. Chapter 517, 298, Vice Governor Ye Yongsheng falls. No good. Can't break free at all. The gap in strength is too vast. What should I do? What should I do now? Lin Zikin scanned his surroundings while his mind raced, desperately seeking a way to escape. At this moment, his whole body was clenched in the massive grip of Ye Yongsheng, immobilized. If he couldn't escape soon, he would quickly be subjected to soul possession by Ye Yongsheng. Under the enhancement of the Tianren wisdom root. Quickly, Lin Zikin thought of a way to escape. A bold way to escape. That was self-destruction. The sea beneath his feet still blazed with undying red flames. Standing upon this sea of fire, if he self-destructed upon falling, he should be able to trigger the rebirth in flames biometric attribute. And the revival point after being reborn in flames would most likely appear somewhere else, not still within the clutches of Ye Yongsheng, the treacherous deputy province lord. But all these were still just conjectures, everything remained unknown. Because no one had tried it, no one knew whether self-destruction could lead to rebirth in flames, nor if it would refresh the revival point, and if it truly was refreshed, where it would appear. Just as Lin Zikin hesitated whether to choose self-destruction for escape, Ye Yongsheng, holding him with one hand, began to take action. He summoned a pitch-black bead out of thin air with a mere thought. The bead was only as big as a walnut. Sleek on the surface. Inside seemed to hide a black hole, the epitome of pitch darkness. Upon seeing this bead, Lin Zikin sensed an extremely astonishing spiritual power from within. The spiritual power contained in this bead was at least of mythical level existence. Is this the tool used for possessing me? Lin Zikin stared at the bead in front of him, his expression grave. Opposite him, Ye Yongsheng, unusually not uttering even a word of nonsense, immediately poured his own spiritual power into the bead in front of him, beginning the transfer of his will. Simultaneously, he also began to extract Lin Zikin's spiritual power from afar, intending to strip his will away into nothing, then usurp, and occupy Lin Zikin's body with his own will. Pain. Excruciating pain. Terrible pain. The excruciating pain caused by the extraction of spiritual power made Lin Zikin's face contort. It was a pain more heart-wrenching than drilling into the core. However, pain was secondary. What was crucial was that the spiritual power inside his body was being rapidly extracted, and it wouldn't be long before his body turned into an empty shell, becoming the vessel for possession. Realizing this, Lin Zikin did not hesitate at all and immediately chose to self-destruct. Being possessed, there was no glimmer of hope. Self-destructing, there was still a glimmer of hope. This was a multiple-choice question with a certain answer, no hesitancy needed. As soon as the thought of self-destruction came, the next instant, Lin Zikin's body began to swell drastically, with his blood chi power nearly bursting out like a volcanic eruption. Noticing this, Ye Yongsheng quickly spread his spiritual power to suppress it, preventing Lin Zikin from self-destructing. Under the spiritual suppression of a mythical level expert, the blood chi power inside Lin Zikin that was about to burst forth was instantly subdued, unable to erupt and self-destruct. This is bad. Seeing his self-destruction successfully halted, Lin Zikin's face drastically changed. Unable to self-destruct meant no chance for being reborn in flames. The spiritual power would continue being extracted until his will was completely gone. In the end, he would become a soulless shell of flesh, ready for the treacherous deputy city lord to possess. Self-destruction wasn't viable. Is there any other method to escape? Relying on myself is definitely not working. Call for help? Who can I call for help? Lin Zikin, enduring the severe pain of having his spiritual power forcibly extracted, had his brain spinning rapidly, trying to find a way to escape. However, in such a short time, he couldn't think of any effective means to escape. Just as half of Lin Zikin's spiritual power had been extracted and his will began to blur. Ah, no! Ya Yongsheng, right in front of him, suddenly cried out in pain, forcibly stopping the extraction of spiritual power. Lin Zikin was startled, not understanding what had just happened. But these were not the focal points. The point was, he had escaped from Ya Yongshen's spiritual suppression and could now flee. Realizing this, Lin Zikin didn't dare to delay even a moment. He immediately ignited all his qi blood and spiritual power and fled from Ya Yongsheng at the highest speed. The direction of his escape headed straight for city number 1. He needed to take Shen Qinghan, who was still in the city, and leave this place of trouble. As he fled at high speed, Lin Zikin intentionally dispersed a strand of spiritual power to observe the condition of Ya Yongsheng behind him. To see what exactly had befallen the treacherous deputy city lord. Why had he suddenly let out a painful scream? As the spiritual power spread towards the rear. Quickly, Lin Zikin observed the current state of Ya Yongsheng, and his brow furrowed slightly. At this moment, Ya Yongsheng's body surface was rapidly sprouting a lot of fine fuzz, and his originally somewhat human-like face grew increasingly beast-like. Who is inside my body? Who is erasing my will? What on earth is happening? Ya Yongsheng's face showed panic, not understanding what was happening. He intently stared at the pitch-black bead in front of him, suspecting that the bead was possessing him. With this suspicion, he struggled to lift a huge beastly claw, drew the bead into his hand, and without any hesitation, squeezed hard. Crack! Chapter 518, 298. Vice-Governor Ya Yongsheng falls _2. Only the crisp sound of something shattering could be heard. The pitch-black bead in Ya Yongsheng's hand instantly broke into a pile of powder, slipping through the cracks of his claws and drifting away with the wind. With the bead shattered, the wool ceased to drain away. But what drove Ya Yongsheng to despair was that his current state showed no signs of improvement, and he still felt as though his flesh was being possessed by an external life form. What's going on? What on earth is happening? Who is trying to possess me? Ya Yongsheng's face was filled with terror, his eyes brimming with despair. Just a short while ago, he had been attempting to possess Lin Zikin's body, and in the blink of an eye, the tables had turned, and he was the one being possessed by an unknown life form, which he found hard to accept. I didn't expect to awaken within the body of a traitor from Earth like you. Suddenly, a sinister voice echoed deep within Ya Yongsheng's mind. The moment he heard the voice, Ya Yongsheng's eyes widened in disbelief. It was the voice of the Night King. It was the Night King trying to possess my body. Why? The Night King is a highly esteemed, mythical level expert who looks down upon the world. Why would he want to possess my body? Wait. Could it be that the mythical level expert who perished in the central region was the Night King? In that instant, Ya Yongsheng realized everything. The Night King had fallen in a mythical level battle in the central region, and he, having recently merged a drop of the Night King's essence blood, had inadvertently become the vessel for the Night King's revival. Great Night King! I am but a lowly legendary level insect. This body is made of the vile flesh and blood of humans. My body is truly unworthy of serving as the vessel for your will, it would tarnish your exalted status. Lin Zikin was just here. He hasn't gone far, and as you know, his body is exceedingly special. Only his body is worthy of your will. Ye Yongshen's voice was filled with the desire to live. He did not want his life to end this way. He desired to evolve into a mythical level creature. To gain an endless lifespan. To ensure no being could ever threaten his life again. To forever exist in this world. To live high above the rest. In response to Ye Yongshen's plea, which bordered on the abject, the Night King inside him, rapidly reviving, felt no stir of emotion. After a long while, the Night King finally spoke, devoid of emotion, "You're right, your body is indeed unworthy of bearing my will." Upon hearing this, Ye Yongsheng was overjoyed, the look of despair on his face swept away in an instant. But before he could revel in his relief, the Night King inside him spoke again, "However, before possessing Lin Zikin's body, I will need to make use of your despicable flesh." The moment those words were spoken, the reviving Night King suddenly burst forth with spiritual power. Before Ye Yongsheng could react, his will was completely erased in an instant, and the Night King wholly took over his body. Such a decrepit body! The Night King, having completely possessed Ye Yongshen's body, felt disdain for his new form, which barely reached the first tier of mythical level and would soon degrade to legendary level. After briefly adjusting to the new body, swiftly, the Night King sent out a ripple of spiritual power at the mere thought. The expanse was vast. It almost covered the entire southern domain. This was the might of a mythical level creature. You flee quite swiftly. Merely an instant, and you've flown hundreds of miles. Yet, it's still too slow for me. The Night King looked in the direction of Lin Zikin, as though observing an ant, with a sneer of superiority plastered on his face. Just like Ye Yongsheng, he considered all beings below mythical level to be insignificant. It's too bright. Better if it's darker. The Night King gazed up at the bright sky and then snapped his fingers with a crisp sound. The moment the snap echoed, the once clear skies turned gloomy in an instant. Great swathes of the southern domain were plunged into silent darkness. This was the Night King's unique ability, Great Dark Sky. Hundreds of miles away, up in the sky, Lin Zikin was frantically unleashing his chi blood and spirit at high speed, rushing towards Fortress No. 1 to escape this perilous place with Shen King Han from the city. His adversary was no longer the previous Ye Yongsheng, whose biological level was at legendary level, but had become a mythical level expert from the southern domain, the Night King. Lin Zikin was fully aware of his limitations, knowing that no matter how skilled at overcoming levels he was, there was no way he could defeat such a mythical level expert. Therefore, he decisively chose to flee, without hesitating for a moment. What happened? Why has it gotten dark? Lin Zikin was flying at high speed when suddenly the entire sky darkened. His senses were greatly suppressed. His range of perception shrank and shrank again. Szzzt. Suddenly, a powerful tearing sound emanated from ahead. Hearing the sound, Lin Zikin immediately looked toward its source. What came into his view was a huge rift with electric arcs flowing through it. The moment he saw the rift, his entire demeanor became solemn, his eyebrows tightly furrowed. He was well aware of what a sudden rift tearing open in the sky signified. It meant that a powerful being was breaking through the void. Given the current situation and location, other than the Night King, who had possessed Ye Yongsheng to resurrect himself, there would not be a second expert capable of breaking through the void. Therefore, the powerful being breaking through the void at this moment, was certainly the Night King without a doubt. Thinking this, Lin Zikin didn't hesitate at all and swiftly dived towards the sea below. When facing a mythical level expert, especially one known as the King of the Skies like the Night King, traveling by land or air would mean certain death. The only route with a chance of escape was the water route below. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening splash, Lin Zikin turned into a red streak of light and instantly plunged into the sea below, splashing up large waves of red flames. The moment he entered the sea, Lin Zikin activated his biometric attribute Blessing of Melting Water, completely merging with the sea water and sinking at the highest speed towards the unfathomable depths. Despite his proficiency in water, he had no confidence in outswimming the Night King. The difference in their biological levels was too vast to be compensated for by mere proficiency. Above the sea level, the Night King slowly emerged from the rift, his expression calm and unhurried. He even knew to sink rapidly to the sea bottom. I must say, quite intelligent. Pity, the disparity in strength is too vast, no matter how clever, it's all in vain. The Night King looked at the sea surface where ripples continued to spread, chuckled, then waved his hand and tore open a huge rift beside him. Then, with a calm face, he stepped into the depths of the rift. In the depths of the sea, with the enhancement of various water-based biometric attributes like blessing of melting water, Linziken dove tens of thousands of meters in an instant, quickly leaving the sea surface far behind. Just when he thought that diving so deep could possibly hide him from the Night King's pursuit. Szzzt. He heard that familiar sound again. Linziken couldn't win. He was killed in an instant. Reborn in flames. The Night King saw the profoundness and was somewhat shocked, then great dark sky, extinguishing the fire. Linziken fled into the depths of the sea. In the depths of the sea, Linziken saw a fragment of the palace of the water god. What's going on? Wasn't the palace of the water god in Hanhan's Sea of Consciousness? On the other side, Shen Qinghan was also startled. She actually saw Linziken in her own Sea of Consciousness. Linziken couldn't win. He was killed in an instant. Reborn in flames. The Night King saw the profoundness and was somewhat shocked, then great dark sky, extinguishing the fire. Linziken fled into the depths of the sea. In the depths of the sea, Linziken saw a fragment of the palace of the water god. What's going on? Wasn't the palace of the water god in Hanhan's Sea of Consciousness? On the other side, Shen Qinghan was also startled. She actually saw Linziken in her own Sea of Consciousness. P.S. Setting the bowl, begging for monthly pass and recommendation tickets. Chapter 519, 299. Water God reviving? The Night King is in danger. The moment the Night King stepped out from the crack, the formidable biometric pressure he emitted pushed the surrounding seawater away, creating an oppressive vacuum zone. Linziken reacted very quickly, diving deep into the bottomless seabed just a second before the Night King emerged from the crack. By the time the Night King stepped out from the crack, Linziken had already created a distance of several thousand meters between them. Still making futile struggles, the Night King looked down at Linziken, who kept diving deeper, his eyes revealing a cat toying with a mouse gaze. Then, with a mere thought, he tore open another huge rift in the space at his side. He stepped in calmly and stepped out just as unhurriedly. When the Night King re-emerged from the crack, he precisely blocked the path where Linziken was diving, appearing right beneath him. Seeing the Night King appear again, Linziken's heart sank to the abyss. There's no escape. Simply no escape. Tearing through the void is too much like cheating, similar to having a door that leads anywhere. No matter the distance, a mere thought is enough to reach, making it impossible for his target to escape. The more Linziken thought about it, the more he felt desperate. Across from him, the Night King looked at Linziken with great interest, inspecting his physical body to see what special attributes this earthling, consistently sought after by the Sun-Moon Sacred Land, possessed. During this time, Linziken tried to move, but was completely restrained by the Night King's spiritual power and couldn't budge. He could only allow the Night King to invade and thoroughly scrutinize his biometric information. What exactly is the deal with your body? How could you evolve into a legendary level creature at the mere age of 20? It's too unbelievable. No wonder the Sun-Moon Sacred Land has always been scheming to capture you. There must be some unknown secrets within you. While peering into Linziken's physical body, the Night King's expression gradually became excited. After steadying his emotions slightly, the Night King's voice became much calmer. I'm giving you a chance to escape. Try your best, fight as hard as you can to escape, maybe you could escape from my hands. After speaking, he released the spiritual restraint on Linziken, allowing him to flee. As soon as the spiritual restraint lifted, Linziken didn't hesitate for a moment, immediately erupting with chi blood and spirit to flee deeper into the seabed at the highest speed. Meanwhile, he maximized the effects of his biometric attributes such as blessing of melting water and natural camouflage. He knew the Night King was letting him run for a specific reason, just like Ye Yongsheng before, who also wanted to test the limits of his physical body to see what was special about it. Boom! 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 Linziken's speed of diving was extremely fast, creating a tremendous roar as he moved through the water. In just the blink of an eye, he had dived several thousand meters deep, completely distancing himself from the Night King above. However, he had only distanced himself from the Night King's physical body and had not escaped the Night King's spiritual lock. The spiritual power of a mythical level creature was too strong, something not even a legendary level creature could shake off. No matter how deep Linziken dived or how far he distanced himself from the Night King above, the Night King could appear in front of Linziken whenever he wished, by simply willing it and tearing through the void. Yet even so, Linziken still chose to flee. Not fleeing guaranteed soul possession. To flee might offer a minuscule chance of escape. 10,000 meters. 20,000 meters. 30,000 meters. 40,000 meters. 50,000 meters. Linziken continued to dive deeper. In just over 10 seconds, he had reached a depth of 50,000 meters. Yet, the seafloor was still nowhere in sight. The scenes below remained a deep and profound darkness. The only difference was that he could distinctly feel the weakening of the Night King's spiritual power. It had weakened to the point of being barely perceptible. In the ocean's depths of 50,000 meters, it seemed he had reached the limit of the Night King's sensory range. Upon this realization, Linziken felt a flicker of hope in this otherwise desperate situation, a glimmer of hope for escape. 60,000 meters. 70,000 meters. 80,000 meters. 90,000 meters. 100,000 meters. In the blink of an eye, another 10 or so seconds had passed. Linziken had dived another 50,000 meters. The total depth of his dive had now reached a staggering 100,000 meters. At this depth, Linziken could barely sense the Night King's spiritual lock on him anymore. However, he still didn't dare to be careless and continued to dive frantically to ensure he could truly escape the Night King above. 110,000 meters. 120,000 meters. 130,000 meters. Linziken didn't stop for a moment, continuing his intense, high-speed dive, never daring to relax for even a second. When he reached a depth of 131,432 meters, he suddenly stopped his dive. Not because he had reached the seabed and couldn't dive any further, but because, suddenly, a vast palace appeared out of nowhere in front of him. A familiar palace, the Palace of Water God. Linziken was stunned. His entire being froze on the spot. The Palace of Water God was supposedly in Shen Qinghan Sea of Consciousness, so how could it suddenly appear here out of nowhere? The strangest part was that, although the Palace of Water God was right in front of him, he couldn't sense its presence and could only see it with his eyes. It was like a mirage, visible but untouchable. Merely a false illusion. Above, the Night King quietly sensed every movement of Linziken, not showing any emotional fluctuations despite Linziken's increasing dive depth gradually exceeding his sensory range in the ocean. Before allowing Linziken to dive and escape, the Night King had already embedded a spiritual imprint inside Linziken's body. Chapter 520, 299. Water God revived? Night King in danger. _2. Even if Linziken was far away, so far beyond the range of spiritual perception, he could, at any time and with a single thought, tear through the void and appear before Linziken. His affinity with water is outstanding. He's descended over 100,000 meters and yet his speed shows no sign of slowing. His ability to conceal his presence is equally impressive, it's now almost impossible to sense his aura. Why has he suddenly stopped? Has he realized the reality and given up escaping? The Night King sensed that Lin Zikin had suddenly stopped after descending to a depth of 130,000 meters, filling his heart with confusion, not understanding what was going on. He waited quietly for a while, and seeing that Lin Zikin had no intention of continuing his descent, stopped observing and raised his hand to tear a huge rift at his side, ready to step through the void and descend before Lin Zikin. At this moment, like Lin Zikin, he could not detect the presence of the palace of the water god through spiritual perception. 130,000 meters under the sea. Lin Zikin looked at the palace of the water god ahead with eyes full of confusion. What exactly was going on with the palace of the water god before his eyes? Was it a projected illusion? But it looked very real. Aside from being undetectable by spiritual perception, every other aspect was incredibly realistic. It didn't seem like a projection at all. As Lin Zikin pondered this, boom boom boom. The palace of the water god in front suddenly moved, pushing a massive amount of seawater over, creating a thunderous noise that was deafening. Lin Zikin thought of retreating. But after a second thought, considering the palace of the water god had many connections to Shen King Han and was likely to be an ally, he steeled himself and stood his ground waiting. In the blink of an eye, the palace of the water god moved from a kilometer away, instantly teleporting to a stop right in front of Lin Zikin. Looking at the towering and majestic palace before him, his heart was filled with doubt and incomprehension. At the same time, he felt a slight thrill of excitement. He was puzzled, why would the palace of the water god, which should be in Shen King Han's Sea of Consciousness, appear here? The excitement came from the possibility that the palace of the water god could help him escape from the current crisis. The water god was one of the oldest among the 5 elements gods. To the water god, the Night King, a new upstart, was probably no different from an ant. While Lin Zikin was thinking these thoughts, slaw! A crisp sound of space tearing subtly rang out. On hearing the noise, Lin Zikin's complexion changed instantly. Realizing the situation, he immediately burst forth with all the chi blood and spirit within his body, diving deeper into the ocean bed as fast as possible, trying to escape the Night King's grasp. Even though he had just placed his hopes on the palace of the water god, when faced with danger, his instinct was still to choose to flee at the first opportunity. He took that opportunity to flee without hesitation. Regrettably, it was still a step too slow. Lin Zikin had barely dived less than 100 meters when the Night King had already emerged from the rift, and with a single thought, unleashed a vast and boundless spiritual power, freezing Lin Zikin on the spot, unable to move. The palace of the water god. After immobilizing Lin Zikin, the Night King noticed the floating palace of the water god ahead, his eyes filled with confusion and incomprehension. Like Lin Zikin, he could not detect the palace with spiritual perception at this moment and could only see it with his eyes. Has the palace of the water god always been here, or did it suddenly appear? The Night King asked Lin Zikin as he looked at him. He knew that the reason Lin Zikin had suddenly stopped his descent was undoubtedly because he had seen this palace. He had never seen the palace of the water god, but he was aware of the existence of the water god, one of the 5 elements gods. It was utterly puzzling for him to see the palace of the water god here. The water god was one of the oldest deities from the origin land. How could his palace appear in such an unremarkable stretch of the ocean? None of it made logical sense. Confronted with the Night King's question, Lin Zikin did not respond as expected, choosing instead to remain silent. Lin Zikin was generous by nature, but he wasn't so magnanimous as to help his enemy solve their puzzles. Not speaking. Quite spirited, I see. But it's all in vain. The Night King's voice was devoid of emotion. With that, he directly placed a hand on Lin Zikin's head, using a special secret method to invade Lin Zikin's memory. The moment his memory was invaded, a surge of intense pain swept through Lin Zikin's entire body, causing his whole face to contort in agony. Inside the ruined city number 1. Shen King Han, with her proficiency in liquid manipulation, continuously moved across the battlefield, healing the wounded and helping those who had lost too much blood to recover it. Thanks to her treatment, hundreds, if not thousands of wounded were able to hold on to their lives instead of being left permanently on the battlefield. Are you okay? Shen Qinghan crouched beside Luo Qingxiu, as she helped her recover lost blood, and inquired gently. In her concern, Shen Qinghan avoided using any particular form of address. That was because Shen Qinghan did not know whether she should call Luo Qingxiu a senior sister or Bai Shuet. Regardless of which title, she felt awkward using it. Calling her senior sister felt strange because, despite both being disciples of the same master, Yuan Dongji, they never really interacted like fellow disciples. Calling her Bai Shui was awkward because Luo Qingxiu didn't care about the friendship they had back in the second grade of elementary school. If she addressed her so affectionately, it would seem like she was putting too much effort into a one-sided relationship. Shen Qinghan, who was reserved, disliked being overly forward. Therefore, she simply chose not to address Luo Qingxiu at all. "I'm fine," replied Luo Qingxiu with a cold tone, "you go and treat the others. I can heal the remaining wounds on my own." Shen Qinghan curtly responded, "Okay." After speaking, she stood up and moved toward other injured soldiers. But after just 2 steps, she stopped, rooted to the spot in shock. Ziyi Chen. Am I seeing things? How could Ziyi Chen suddenly appear in my sea of consciousness? As Shen Qinghan sensed the images within her sea of consciousness, confusion filled her watery peach blossom eyes. She saw Lin Zikan in her sea of consciousness. She watched as Lin Zikan dove rapidly in her sea of consciousness, as fast as lightning. Such a bizarre occurrence left her somewhat stunned. With her current understanding, she couldn't comprehend what was happening in her sea of consciousness. She steadied her emotions slightly. Shen Qinghan looked at the Lin Zikan in her sea of consciousness and tried to communicate with him. "Ziyi Chen. Ziyi Chen, can you hear me? Can't you hear?" Seeing no response from Lin Zikan in her sea of consciousness, Shen Qinghan slightly furrowed her brows. At this moment, she was truly puzzled. What exactly was happening with the sudden appearance of Lin Ziyi in her sea of consciousness? Was it really Lin Ziyi himself? Or was it just some false illusion? Shen Qinghan couldn't wrap her head around it. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. With the doubts and confusion in her heart, she tried to control the only thing she could in her sea of consciousness, the Palace of Water God, and moved it as quickly as possible towards Lin Zikan to investigate what was happening. P.S. Holding out my bowl, I ask for monthly passes and recommendation tickets. On the other side. Shen Qinghan also froze for a second. She couldn't believe she saw Lin Zikan in her own sea of consciousness. She saw that Lin Zikan was about to be searched by Sohu. She acted. The scene shifts to the Night King, who was crushed on the spot by the Water God. In Shen Qinghan's sea of consciousness, Lin Zikan was being pursued by the Night King. She controlled the Palace of Water God and eliminated the revived Night King in Ye Yongshen's body. Lin Zikan chose to head towards the number 36 city leading to the southern domain. City number 36, connected to Shanghai City. Worried that they couldn't hold on, Yuan Dongji had just recovered when he joined the battle. Many were present. Yuan Dongji, Lu Juanwu, Song Yuan, and others. Yuan Dongji was seriously wounded, not yet healed. In the skies above the central region now and then, the din of great battles rumbled. A towering tree that pierced the heavens broke through the clouds. At that moment, outside of city number 36, a great battle ensued. The city felt like it was about to be breached. Entering the central region, entering the ruins, gaining power, undergoing frenzied evolution. The central region, in fact, is the very center of the abyss. All other domains' abysses are extensions of the central region's abyss. And then, legendary level. Shortly after, the situation flipped instantaneously, with the forces of Sun Moon Sacred Land routing their enemies. Ultimately, in this great battle, the Sun-Moon Sacred Land triumphed. The Earthlings comprehensively withdrew from the origin land. Because Shen Qinghan was still trapped in the palace of Water God and couldn't leave. Lin Zikan alone held the fort, protecting Shen Qinghan. City number 1. In the end, leveraging Shen Qinghan's capabilities, Lin Zikan took her and fled into the abyss. He discovered it was exactly like in his dream. Afterwards, the male protagonist utilized the monsters of the abyss to slay either legendary level experts or mythical level experts. Backed by the abyss, he became the Abyss Master. Utilizing the monsters of the abyss, he slew mythical level creatures. The sky and earth changed color, various phenomena occurred, and everyone was astonished. Earth's Great War. Nuclear weapons. Mechanically modified humans entered the scene. P.S. Holding out my bowl, I ask for monthly passes and recommendation tickets.